Hello there, YouTubers. Before we get started, let me just say that if you were expecting me to just talk about action and fighting games rated T to M, you are sorely mistaken. Sometimes I like to take a break from hardcore games and treat myself to a relaxing puzzle game. That being said, Busted Move 4 is anything but relaxing, in a good way. I'm playing on the PlayStation emulator, and it's just as hard as I remember back when I played it ages ago. I don't think many people realize it, but puzzle games like this one can require just as much skill to play as a fighting game or action game. In Bust a Move, I'm expected to pop all the color bubbles before they reach the bottom. It's pretty tricky, as any bubbles I shoot doesn't always go where I want, effectively costing me the round. In case you guys haven't played, this isn't something I can take my time on, as the bubbles will automatically shoot after a few seconds, just as it was in the arcade. It might just be me thinking, but since this is played on the PlayStation instead of an arcade cabinet, there should be an option to give unlimited time to plan your move in the one-player mode. Now, in some instances, I can play and clear a round in a certain amount of time and get additional points. Meaning, the faster I play, the more points I get at the end of each round. Sounds like a better incentive than just having the bubble launch automatically after a few seconds. Easier said than done, as you must be good at aiming your bubbles to clear all the colored bubbles. Otherwise, you could cause the bubbles to reach the bottom more quickly, slimming your chances of clearing the stage. Despite that, I was able to get the hang of it after playing for a few minutes, as you can see by my score here. Which is good, because both the arcade mode and story mode in Bust a Move 4 are pretty challenging. One of my favorite touches in this game is giving each character certain bubbles to use against their opponents while clearing out their own bubbles. As a kid, I wonder why other games similar to this game never tried something like it. One game that comes to mind is Tetris Attack / Panel de Pong. Since that game also had many different characters to choose from, it would have been nice if they each had different blocks to throw at their opponents, much like how the bubbles you use work in Bust a Move 4. One minor issue I have with this idea is some characters use the same type of bubbles to throw at your opponent. For example, if you looked at the character select screen, you would have seen that both Bub and Devlin here have the same colored bubbles to fight their opponents with. Some characters like Al, Canet, Marino, and Carol are a little better, as most of their bubbles are rainbow bubbles. In order to clear out the rainbow bubbles, you'd have to connect 3 matching colored bubbles, effectively reducing your opponent's chances of clearing out their bubbles before you. Now, you could argue that the color bubbles can be just as helpful, as one bubble of a different color will block a row of green bubbles, for example. It's possible, but more often than not, I've ended up helping my opponent clear out their bubbles and turning the tables on me, making it hard to clear out my bubbles. With the rainbow bubbles, I have a better chance of making it harder for my opponent to clear out their bubbles. And if I'm lucky, I can cause their bubbles to reach the bottom in less than half a minute. I also like how when you or your opponent clears out the bubbles, the character will do some kind of animated action, looking like they're attacking each other or being attacked themselves. At times it can be a little too distracting, especially if you're on the losing side, and both Giant and Marino here are bad examples. Their sprite animations can cover the bottom where your arrow is pointing, making it possible to miss your shot. Regardless, it would have been dull like Panel de Pong if the characters here were just still images while shooting bubbles. For the most part, you hear the same music, but when it comes to certain characters, that music will play for that particular character regardless of who's playing as them. As nice as it is to hear a different theme every now and then, Tam Tam's theme is my least favorite in the game. Don't know why, but hearing the Tarzan jungle cry feels out of place in a game like this. The theme of Madame Luna is a little better, as it gives off a final opponent vibe, although it's possible to face her 4 rounds into the arcade mode. This game is lacking in a variety of tracks, and for the sake of this video, I didn't turn off the music in favor of my own, but whenever I come back to play this game, I usually turn off the music and play my own music playlist. There are some video game tracks I can listen to all day, but this isn't one of them. Even if some characters had to share different music, I think it would have been nice if Marino had an ocean theme, or if Bram and Jigen had a techno theme of some kind. Granted, I still might not like the additional tracks I suggested, but it's always nice to hear a good variety of music instead of that one theme you hear 75% of the time. As I said earlier, both story mode and the arcade mode can be pretty challenging, but there are reasons why I keep coming back to them. Each character has different interactions with each other in the story mode. My only issue there is that you face the characters in the same order. At some point you'll be facing your character in a mirror match. For Bub and Bob, it wouldn't really matter too much since they're technically two different characters, but everyone else, you're bound to face your character that you've chosen. Honestly, it would have been great if the character order had been shuffled around and the mirror matches are excluded. Still, it's worth it to see every character interaction at least once in the story mode. Arcade mode is a little better as characters you face change constantly. Sure, the character interactions are gone here, but it's nice to fight other characters in different orders. One thing I've never seen before is the possibility of facing that same character twice in a row. It's rare, but there were times where I finished beating someone like Cleon, only to face her again. It's something I would have expected from a fighting game, playing the survival modes. However you look at it, it's a nice way to shuffle characters around, something story mode should have done as well. My favorite part of arcade mode is winning enough matches against your opponent lets you see a portrait of the character you are playing as. I'm not sure if the amount changes with each character you play as, or if each character has a certain amount of matches required to win, but I think it's neat, encouraging you to play as everyone to see everyone's portraits in different styles, almost like they came from a DeviantArt account. And Kuro's portrait just happens to be my favorite of the portraits that I've seen of the characters in Bust a Move 4. I know it's pretty minor for such little payoff, but at least it's something. I would talk about the puzzle modes, but I don't really have a whole lot to say about them, other than they're just more modes that you play by yourself, with the grade at the end depending on how well you play, whether you win or lose, like what you saw at the beginning of the video. And of course, who could resist the chance to get a high score and wins? One thing I can say is that if you write words like sex or ass in the name, we'll change to ah. We wouldn't want our kids to see such adult words, now would we? If you ask me, sometimes you just have to say, fuck it. And that, YouTubers, was Bust a Move 4, one of the puzzle games I would recommend for you guys to play at least once if you haven't already. Until then, game on!